All right. Thanks, Jan. So I'm going to talk a little bit about lift station operation and maintenance and why it's important. So just a little bit about my background first. So I do have a lot of experience in the design of lift stations, but I've also been involved in the operation and maintenance of lift stations. So I have been that person that gets alarm calls in the middle of the night. So I don't wish that upon anyone. So that's kind of how we're leading off in this presentation. So why should we care about lift station operation and maintenance? Because if we don't, bad things will happen. So lift stations, by their very nature, they operate in environments that are very hostile to the pumping and control equipment. So if effective O&M procedures are followed, we can reduce that risk of a lift station failure greatly. You know, it's easy to fall into that out of sight, out of mind attitude towards lift stations because when they operate fine, you don't really think about it. But when they fail, things can get really messy and very costly. So again, why should we care about lift station operation and maintenance? Well, if we don't, improper O&M can lead to preventative lift station failures. And if a lift station fails, sanitary sewer overflows can occur. And the whole point of a collection system is to make sure that our sewage is transferred effectively to a treatment facility and not to a roadway or a creek. So as engineers and utility operators, we have an obligation to ensure that our systems are operated efficiently and effectively, and we want to protect the health and the well-being of our residents and the environment. We also want to keep the EPA happy. So similarly, no one wants to experience sewage backups in their houses. You know, if a lift station fails, especially from preventable conditions, people will get mad. On the same token, if we operate and maintain our lift stations poorly, there's a good chance that there's going to be some nuisance odors, and this makes people really upset too. So we want to make sure that we are good neighbors and take care of our stations properly. Another important consideration for maintaining our lift stations and operating them efficiently is to make sure we use our resources in a good manner. We don't want to waste our money. So if we don't focus on effective O&M, the chance of lift station failure significantly increases. And waiting for a failure to occur will most always incur higher repair costs and strain your valuable resources. So it's much easier to proactively plan repairs rather than reacting to emergency situations. As we've always seen, these emergency situations seem to always happen in the middle of the night, on a weekend, during a storm, when your lead technician is on vacation. So we want to try to avoid those situations. So where do we start? So the foundation of a good O&M plan is inspections. You need to know your equipment. You learn about your lift stations just like you learn about a friend by spending time with them and intentionally learning about them and how they operate. So some operators, they might not think of their lift stations as their friend, but rather an enemy. But remember, we need to keep our friends close, but our enemies even closer. So some maintenance guidelines. So inspections, obviously, as I just mentioned, are very critical to the operational health of lift stations. You know, routine inspections can promote proactive maintenance. When you know what normal operation looks like, it's much easier to notice the small operational deviations before they turn into huge problems. You know, other maintenance activities can be scheduled based on manufacturer recommendations and your own experience. As you know, not every lift station requires the same level of maintenance. So a working knowledge of each station will really help you determine what the necessary maintenance intervals should be and based on the local conditions. But even with routine maintenance, you know, some components will inevitably fail. So it's essential that you have spare parts on hand of critical components. This will minimize downtime, especially for parts that are not readily available. So what are some operational tips for success? I think the most important component of a successful lift station O&M plan is the operations staff. They're on the front lines of the battle to keep that equipment running and in working order. So even the most sophisticated lift stations, they won't function unless there are competent personnel that routinely inspect, maintain, and operate them. And the operations staff, they really need to have the resources and the training necessary to ensure that they can accomplish their important task. It should be noted also that there are a lot of resources available at little to no cost to help guide or troubleshoot operational issues. Equipment manufacturers and design engineers are a great resource, and that we can provide a lot of useful information to ensure operational success. Everyone has a vested interest to make sure everything is running properly. Likewise, investing in the right equipment for the right application is vitally important. Good equipment used in the wrong application is not a wise use of resources, and it will lead to inefficient operation and premature failures. David mentioned the high electricity cost. If you have the wrong equipment, it's going to just rack up the equipment or the energy cost. So another important component of a lift station system is implementation of remote monitoring or SCADA systems. As David and Jan mentioned, remote monitoring allows the operators to receive immediate notification with any situation that may lead to a station failure. So if you can know right away that there's a problem occurring, you can remedy that very quickly instead of waiting for a disaster to happen. So another way to obtain success with your lift station is incorporating an emergency power supply with an automatic transfer switch that allows your station to remain functional during a utility power outage. This can just be a nice smooth transition, so if you lose power, the generator automatically kicks in and supplies power, and there's no backups or anything they have to deal with. So as David also mentioned, if you're unsure of the overall condition or adequacy of a lift station, a lift station assessment can be an extremely valuable tool for identifying deficiencies and providing a corrective plan to keep your system operating. So that was just a quick overview of some O&M ideas for the lift station. So here's a very simple summary. Putting a little effort in along the way to ensure your lift stations are operated and maintained effectively will spare you from huge headaches down the road. A happy lift station equals a happy life. So with that, we'll open it up to any questions. You can reach out to any of us on the panel here via email if you have any comments or questions you'd like to follow up on. And with that, we'll turn it back over to Zach.
Thank you, Mike. And thank you all for listening to this. Our next presenter will be Kathy Morley talking about the Hanover Park Forest Main Assessment Program.